everyone, here we are back with block 8 of our 2020 quilt. This block may look a little bit familiar. Last time we did this block, which was our angled rectangle and our flying goose. This block is actually the same exact units. We have our angled rectangle and our flying goose. Okay, the difference is color placement for this one. So here I'm going to have my corners for my angled rectangle be the same color as the wings of my flying goose, where here I had the rectangle be the same color as my flying goose. And just a little hint going forward, the next 3 blocks that we do, so this is 8, blocks 9, 10, and 11 are also going to be dealing with these same 2 units. And they're just going to be really talking about the different looks you can get in your blocks depending upon color placement and the orientation of those 2 units. For today, you already know how to make your angled rectangle. So I already have those 4 pre-made. Okay? And I've shown you 2 different ways to make your flying geese. Today I'm going to show you one more method that's similar to what we did last week, but instead of drawing the lines and stitching and then cutting, we're going to go to the cutting and then stitching. Okay? So again, last block you got this little document which gave you all your different cutting sizes, and we had worked with this draw, stitch, and cut method. Today I'm going to be demoing doing the cut and stitch method, which is cutting my pieces prior to sewing them together. So here are my 4 pieces that I cut. I have the sizes on the pattern. It's the same exact sizes as we did for this method, which means you can also use this ruler if you had it that we talked about last block. You can use this ruler to cut the same sizes even though you're using a different method to sew them together. So I want to take my large square and I want to cut it twice diagonally. All right, so there I have my 4 triangles, the large triangles, which will end up being the body of my flying geese. And then with each one of my small ones, I want to cut it once. If you want, you can try stacking up 1 or 2 of them. Make your cutting go a little bit faster. Do be careful that they are stacked directly on top of each other. So here's all my little wings, and here's the body of my geese. So now I'm going to be sewing 1 small triangle onto the side of each one of my big triangles. When I do this, I want to make sure that I line up this bottom corner and that I have, I'm going to flip it over, that I have my 1/4 inch overlap hanging over the top of my large triangle. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew these units together, and then I'll be back. Okay, so here I have my small triangle on top of my large triangle. I've lined up the corner along the bottom of that large triangle. And now I like to put my needle down and just kind of push that intersection right up against my needle. Then I'm going to put my foot down and begin sewing. Okay, now these were cut on the bias, so we have to be careful not to pull and stretch that edge as we sew. Just let the feed dogs do the work. Again, my needle is down. I'm going to push that up against my needle and let the feed dogs grab it. We do need to iron these before we can add the other triangle. You can go over to your ironing board, obviously. We also have this little tool. It's called the roll and press. And it's a nice little tool where if you're just sitting at your machine and you only have one or two things to deal with, if you take this and just kind of press along that seam, it presses it open really nice and crisp. The little roller on here is from the center point, it's beveled a little bit, so all the pressure of that rolling is right in the center of the tool, so it gives you a nice crisp clean press without having to run over to your iron every time. All right, so I have all four of them pressed over to the side, and now I need to add my second triangle. So again, I want to add it onto this side. I'm going to flip it. I need to match up this corner, my triangle, along the bottom edge of my large triangle, and I want to have that overlap at the top. Put my needle down, butt it right up to my needle, foot down, and begin sewing. And again, I want to try to sew off right where that second triangle is overlapping with the first one. Alright, trim them apart. I need to iron this side open, and there I have my 4 flying geese with the cut and stitch method versus the draw, stitch, and cut method. Okay, here I have my 4 flying geese block. I have them all pressed and squared up, and we're ready to assemble. Again, today we used this cut and stitch method versus the draw, stitch, and cut method, creating 4 flying geese at the same time with 1 large square and 4 small squares. You know, again, personally, I'm kind of partial to cutting things prior to sewing, but it really doesn't matter. It's your choice. I just ask that you actually try it, because a lot of people get scared at a new technique, and this is a type of a block where, or this whole program is kind of meant for you to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and try something new. It's one block. If it doesn't work out, you can go back and remake them in a different method that works better for you. All right, so now we're ready to assemble our corner. And again, for this one, we're dealing with our angled rectangle with our angled corner being in that bottom corner, and then our flying goose pointing at the angled rectangle. So the construction is going to be exactly the same as it was for the last block. We just have a little bit different color combination going on. So I'm going to go sew these. All right, here I am with my 4 blocks sewn together, my 4 units. And again, we're going to be putting them together, having that corner be towards the center with a 1/4 turn for each block. So here's my center. I'm just going to do a 1/4 turn, sew those 2 together, and then a 1/4 turn, and a 1/4 turn. And again, I'm going to be sewing my 2 halves together, and then sewing 1 line down the middle to create my finished block. I don't have a second one of this one already sewn, but this is just a way you kind of get that 3D look where you have, because you've made this color the same as this color, it's like that big pinwheel is floating behind these darker pinwheels. So again, the difference from that block to this block. So this was our red and white colorway that we did. And again, this was the one that I did from my 12 fat quarter group. And this was the one that I did from my scrap bin.